On today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to install an ethanol content analyzer or an ethanol content sensor. I'm going to be using the GPS or German Performance Solutions ethanol content sensor mount that connects to the supercharger. I'm going to show you how I run the wires all the way through the car and into the cabin so that you can get it wired up and hopefully help you guys do the same. So if you want to learn more about this, stick around. We're about to jump into it. We're at the workbench now, and we're taking a look at the German Performance Solutions Ethanol Content Analyzer mount kit. So what comes in the kit is everything you see basically from here over, minus my socket over there. You're going to get the plate or the main bracket here, and this is going to connect to your supercharger via these two holes right here. It'll be fastened down by these two 15mm special nuts. You can see there's a little cylindrical piece here that's going to go through, and then you'll be able to torque down. So you're going to need a 15mm socket for those. You've got your attachment bracket, and this bracket is what is going to be used to attach your ethanol content analyzer to the German Performance Solutions main arm there, the main bracket. So you can see how it lines up with those two holes, and we're going to be using these 3/16 hex head bolts to connect to these 1/2-inch lock nuts to secure it to the actual bracket. So those will go down through like that. I'm going to put the nuts on the bottom because I think that looks nicer, and we're going to tighten those up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this all connected and prepped. Obviously the ethanol content analyzer does not come with the kit. There's an extra hole here that I'm assuming is for a different style ethanol content analyzer, or if you wanted to mount it a different way, I'm not really sure, but we're going to be using those two holes right there. That was super simple, took all of about 3 minutes, and we have the ethanol content analyzer mounted to the German Performance Solutions plate here to go to the supercharger and get mounted. Make sure when you do this, you have your harness adapter aim the direction you want. Most of them will aim towards the back of the engine bay to connect, so just make sure you do that correctly so you don't have to do it twice. But one thing I did notice when I first set the bracket down, you can kind of see right here, it's nice and flat up against the metal. When I first set them on there, there was a little bit of a gap there resting on top of the ethanol content analyzer, but as I tightened it down, it sealed that gap up. It didn't feel like it was putting any undue pressure on the actual sensor at all, and it's nice and secure. This thing is not going anywhere. Now we're at my engine bay, and as you can see, I've already got the two stud nuts off that we're going to be using. I'm using these two. Technically, you could use any one you want, I guess, but this is going to work for me. I've also loosened all the other nuts to the supercharger studs because I don't like just undoing two of those because of how this is torqued down. I want to be able to torque it down evenly again. But what we're going to do is grab our bracket, go under the fuel line here. As you can see, I haven't cut my fuel line because I'm not, I haven't gotten this installed, so I don't know exactly where to make my cuts. But we're going to get these down in here, and from what Marcus said, they can be a little bit tricky to get mounted in perfectly, but that threaded on just fine there. I'm going to get this one started as well. And that one mounted on just fine there. And these are going to torque down to the OEM torque spec, which, if I remember correctly, I think it's like 14 foot-pounds. I just go with good and snug. Remember, these are 15mm nuts. The rest are 13mm in case you're curious. So I'm just gonna get these good and snug. I'm gonna go back and forth. First, I'm gonna just do this one here because I forgot I need to tighten these down like a drum, make sure I get it all correct, which is kind of a pain in the butt now because I'm gonna need another socket. So stand by. We've got everything torqued back down appropriately, and as you can tell, the bracket sits in there perfectly. It's out of the way of everything. I can still access coil packs, things like that if I need to. I can still get to my IAT sensor very easily. This thing is on there rock solid. So yeah, as far as installing the GPS mount, that completes the installation. It took a total of less than 10 minutes from start to finish. So really, really happy with that. Now that we have the ethanol content analyzer mount installed, what we need to do is actually attach the content analyzer to your fuel lines. Now this is where you want to exercise a lot of caution. This is going to be pressurized. Once you make a cut into this and you open this up, do not open your door, because when you open your door, your fuel pump primes and you'll spray fuel everywhere. So there's multiple ways of depressurizing the system. I got to get this out of the way, but that's your fuel pump right there. Let me see if I can get it focused. There we go. That's your fuel pump right here. We can back this nut off really slowly and slowly depressurize the system. A lot of people just cut into this. They just wrap a bunch of towels around, they cut into it very slowly and let it depressurize. And, you know, I might end up doing that. But what I need to do first, I've got quick connects that I need to go ahead and get on here so I can accurately measure where I need to make my cuts. All right, we got the quick connects on. So I'm going to take the fuel line, I'm going to hold it up. These quick connects are going to come up right to about here. They're not going to go all the way up here. They're going to go to this little edge here. So I've got it sitting here, and I want to make sure that it's not super tight. I want to have a little bit of room for play. Make sure nothing's rubbing anything. So I'm going to go right here. Make sure that stays aligned. And then I'm going to go right here. And I'm going to get something that I can make a nice straight even cut with, but I need to go get a bunch of paper towels to wrap over here and protect everything from the fuel that's about to spray. All right, so in my mind, we'll see if this works. This whole section is going to be cut out. We won't be reusing that. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is use my really sharp X-Acto knife, and I'm going to just create a very, 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 very small cut right into this to depressurize it. And so I'm going to try and wrap it up as best as I can. And we're going to just slowly go in here. And there you go. I can hear it. It's putting out a little bit of fuel, not too much. We're going to let that finish depressurizing, which will also allow some of the fuel to drain. You can still see a little bit of fuel coming out. Yep, it's spurting on me here. So we're gonna let this depressurize and then we'll make the cuts. Okay, it's depressurized, but there is still fuel in the line. You can see it wanting to come out there. So I've got a good amount of paper towels and I've got a rag underneath. I've got this really good rubber hose cutter. This allows me to make really awesome straight cuts. And so I'm gonna get this lined up with my mark. Make sure I get a nice straight and even cut on the fuel line. You can see all that fuel coming out now. We're going to go do the same on this one. And we have gotten the fuel line cut. Let's get these attached to the ethanol content analyzer. So it's time to actually attach this to the sensor via the quick connects. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to slip on some of the compression, basically fuel line fittings here. These are what you want to have to make sure it's fully secured onto your quick connects and won't slip off. You need something that's going to really compress on there, not just a regular worm clamp. Don't play around with the fuel system, get something that's going to hold on. If you guys have a better suggestion, let me know, but I know plenty of people that have used these and without issue. These are 14 to 16 millimeter compression clamps for the fuel lines. You need something that's going to fit a 16 millimeter thick fuel line. Basically, this is perfect. It slips right on and we'll be able to tighten it up. So gonna have that. I don't know if this is gonna slip on super easy. If not, I've got some grease, but it actually feels like it's gonna go on without any problems. Oh yeah, lots of fuel there coming out, but that went on perfectly. We can slide this up, slide it back a little bit now, and then we're going to tighten this down. But yes, we do not want to play with the fuel line. So we've got that on there. I'm going to tighten it up again, but for now I'm just getting it on there and getting both sides on. So once again, we'll slip this connection over, push it onto the sensor. That clamp is a little tight. All right, now we have the ethanol sensor fully connected to the fuel lines, and I've gotten these torqued all the way down. They're nice and snug. They're not going anywhere. The one thing you need to do before you do anything else is go ahead and you can open your door, and you want to prime this and make sure that there's no leaks of any kind, okay? So prime the fuel system, do it a couple times to ensure that you got fuel all the way through the fuel line because we drained a good bit out. The other thing before you actually start it is clean up for any spilt fuel that may have gotten onto the bracket or underneath. Obviously the engine gets super hot, so we're gonna spray that down really, really good and get it nice and clean. But we've got that fully installed, and the next step is gonna be running the wiring harness through the firewall or the false firewall there over to the driver's side and into the car so that we can connect it to our ethanol gauge. All right, so after looking through here, there's not a single drop of fuel of any kind here. We've primed the pump a couple times. Everything looks good and solid. Now that we have the ethanol content analyzer installed, the next step is running the wire from the ethanol content analyzer to the actual cabin of the vehicle. As you can tell, mine's already installed actually, so I'm filming this post fact. But first thing we need to do is remove the engine cowling, which is super simple. You just pull this piece off. It just literally pops right off, set it aside. And then this, gently just pull it up and away. Be careful, it can be caught around your cabin air intake area over there. So just don't yank it out, but pull it out gently and it'll come up and around your windshield wiper reservoir. Don't let it get caught on that, but it should come up relatively easy. Set it aside and I'll show you the next step. Once you have your engine cowling removed, the first thing you want to do is pop open your windshield wiper reservoir, pull this little strainer out and look inside of it, make sure it's nice and dry, because if it's not, when you remove this, it'll dump windshield wiper fluid everywhere. So if there's a lot of fluid in there, get something to siphon it out. Mine's empty, so we don't have to worry about it. The first thing you want to do is remove these two 10mm bolts. I've already loosened them for ease of showing you guys, so we're going to pull those out. Don't drop them. Set them somewhere safe. And then the way this comes out is really simple. You just pull up and away from the fender. You can see how it connects into this, let's see if I can show you this hole in the fender right over there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. And it just literally sets in there. So we have that removed. We can set it to the side and work on the ECU. Okay, now that we have the windshield wiper fluid reservoir removed, we need to remove our ECU. That's this right here. And this is simple. You just push down on this tab. And when you do, this thing will pop up out of it like this. And then you've got these two tabs here. You can see this little bar here on each side. You just pull it out. I'm gonna do it with my hand here. You just pull it and it will release it from the actual ECU. Let me see if I can get a better camera angle here to show you guys. There you go. Okay, so you just pull it and that removes it off, and you do that on each side, and then you can push this up and out of the way. See, here's the other one on this side. We're just gonna pull it straight out and it releases it. And so you have those, and you can push these up out of the way as you need. Okay, to remove the top of your fuse box lid here, there's 5 T20 Torx bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, one on the way back there for 4, and then a 5th one right here. And so you need to just unscrew those. They should come out pretty easily. You're probably going to need a 1/4-inch ratchet with some kind of adapter with a T20 bit. Just make sure none of them fall into the bottom because it'll be pretty difficult to remove. So undo all 5 of those and pull it off. You don't have to pull them all the way out. If you get them to where they feel like they're just at the top of the edge, they're designed to kind of sit in this. But if you want to pull them all the way out and set them somewhere safe, that's fine too. All right, I'm going to show you how I found where I'm going to run my wire through. It's a little bit tricky, but it's not impossible. So you can tell I've already got my ECU removed and the top of my fuse box removed here. There are 2 bolts that hold this in. There's one that holds it in here. It's a 10mm nut actually, and then there's one way in the bottom down there. You can kind of see it right there where my finger's pointing. I know it's out of focus, but that's what this piece, I'm sorry, there's a bottom flange, if I can get there. Okay, so you can kind of see it there if I can get the camera to focus. All right, so you can see there's the stud and the flange. I've already got it off. It's another 10mm nut that needs to come off, and I just used a few extensions and a swivel socket to get on there. It's not that difficult, but once you get both of those removed, this has some room to play around with. And then what I did was I pulled this up and I just kind of maneuvered this up, and we'll get to the back here if I can get a good angle to show you guys. All right, you can see that grommet that goes into the firewall, and I've already got this piece of wire in it. It's nice and dirty, but what I did was I took a right angle pick and I poked a very small hole in it, and then I pushed my wire in it while holding this box up. You got to get your hands in there, it's a little tight, but I've got that in there. And if we move around to the car side, stand by, I'll show you. All right, so here we are inside of the cabin with the whole dash removed on the bottom, but you can see that I've got my wire, if I can get my light right, you can see I've got my wire here coming through the firewall. You can see I just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it until I felt a decent amount of resistance, and that's because I got stuck on the top here, but it's come out all the way. So what I can do now is I can kind of push this back a little bit. I can attach my ethanol content analyzer wire to it by taping it really, really good, and I can pull it through and pull it into the actual cabin compartment so that we can run it to our sensor. Okay, I've got my wire completely duct taped to the piece of metal wire that's going through the firewall. It's pretty thick here, and the hole to go in there is nowhere near that thick. I don't want to widen it like crazy because I want to make sure that this stays as watertight as possible once the wire's all the way through. So I'm hoping that I can pull it through without it coming off, and yeah, we're gonna give it a go and see what happens. Okay, so attempt number 1 failed, which I kind of expected it to, but was hoping I might just get lucky. So let's go back in here and show you what I've done now. If you can see, hold on, let me get my light so where you can see what's going on here. Yeah, that's a screwdriver sticking out of the boot. Basically, the hole I poked was way too small, so I got a screwdriver that was about the size of the wire going in. I found out where it came through on the inside of the cabin, and I just pushed up and through, and that's gonna widen that hole enough to allow me to pull the wire through on this next one. So I might even see if I can tape it to that screwdriver and pull it through, because that would be the easiest, and pull it through from the inside. It's just getting my hand back there with this fuse box in the way is really tight, and this fuse box is near impossible to pull out without starting to undo some wires that I don't want to touch. So I'm gonna get in there and try this one more time. Okay, so that worked. I was able to use the wire. I didn't use the screwdriver. I used the wire, duct taped it to the ethanol content wiring harness, or wire, what do you want to say, and I pulled it through, and it got it enough through that gasket where I could grab it with a pair of needle nose pliers and pull it the rest of the way through. So now I just got to remove the duct tape and put everything, you know, tidy everything up in the engine bay. And I'm gonna make sure that I've got the wire basically zip tied off under here so that it's not interfering with anything. And I'm gonna put everything back together here, and we'll work on getting it connected inside the cabin. Before I button everything up, I want to show you guys the exact routing I ran the ethanol content sensor wiring all the way to the firewall. So obviously it comes off the sensor. I've got it zip tied to the fuel line to go around here. Come over here to this break between the foam and these plastic pieces. That way I can still use all my trim. Thought about drilling a hole and putting it through there, but I don't think it's necessary. I've got it running right there. Zip tied it to this wiring harness sheathing. Same thing over there, zip tied it off there. I went underneath the heater core fuel or coolant hoses right there, so it goes underneath those in case I have to mess with them. But yeah, I've got a little bit of slack here that I can play with if need be. It goes all the way underneath there behind your brake fluid reservoir, comes around the back underneath this wiring harness. You can see right there. And then I've got it zip tied off to that wiring harness just to hold it in place, and out in the back behind the fuse panel box, and then into the grommet right there. If anybody sees anything wrong with this, please call me out on it. I've never done this before, just trying to figure it out as I go. Open to suggestions, but otherwise it's gonna be out of the way. Shouldn't really stand out too much here. Shouldn't interfere with the fuel line at all. So let's talk about a couple differences that you might see in my engine bay right now here in 2025 that would be different from the DIY video you just watched, which was filmed in early 2024 before I did the AM Tune engine swap. First off, obviously, the big difference is the intake setup. In the DIY video, I had my DIY 4-inch intake that I created a video for a little over a year ago. People love it. It performs great. I loved the sound of it. I loved how loud that thing was. But when I did the engine swap, I wanted to go ahead and upgrade the throttle body, and I wanted to do a DIY type of a throttle body upgrade. So I picked up a used ultracharger adapter pipe from the forums. It came ported to 80 millimeters already, which is pretty cool. It's a temporary setup because me and Jose from Merc Racing are creating a new adapter, which you never know. Well, it might be out by the time you watch this video. I know we're doing the pre-order currently. It's got a bunch of cool features. Check that out. But in any case, for those of you not familiar, I have my PCV relocated with a throttle body spacer that I have from Merc Racing on the previous setup. And I couldn't connect a throttle body to that with an adapter plate because it puts it right over the timing cover, the upper timing cover, and it makes it really tight, too tight to be able to fit an intake onto it. So I didn't want to do that, didn't want things rubbing. So I got this set up just as a temporary solution to fix it, which is great, works wonderfully. But then I made another change. I decided I didn't want to connect the ethanol content analyzer to the innovative display gauge in the cabin of the car. I wanted it, but I didn't want it out the whole time. I didn't want it being a distraction. I just didn't like the look of that gauge anywhere visible. I was gonna try and make it hidden in there, but ultimately it was more trouble than it was worth. So my buddy Gary hooked me up on a killer price with a Fuel-It Bluetooth adapter that he had laying around in his garage he wasn't using. So I picked that up from him and I was like, sweet, that'll be super simple. I just run the power line into the car, connect it to the power, put the Fuel-It adapter in line, connect it to the sensor, and we're good. Came out here to do that and I came up with another problem. The GPS mount had the straight mount, has this offset bolt. The offset bolt was just too awkward for the fuel lines. It made it stress the fuel lines a little bit too much for me. The straight setup ended up having the Fuel-It adapter hit the APR and a throttle body pipe and the throttle body itself, so I couldn't connect it. It's a pretty long adapter, probably like 3.5, 4 inches long. So looked around at it, ultimately decided I was just gonna drill the third hole. And then did that, just offset it a few degrees, didn't stress out the fuel lines, was able to sink it down, and it's completely clear of the intake and the throttle body. That adapter wiring harness runs under the ultracharger pipe, connects to the power line, and that is run into the car through the firewall to the fuse panel on the side of the dash, and it's connected, works beautifully. I really love the Fuel-It Bluetooth adapter. Anytime I want to check it, I just bring up my phone, turn on the app, connects in seconds, and displays clearly what my ethanol content is. So really happy about that. Told the GPS guys about this setup because I know a lot of people have the APR throttle body adapter pipe and the ultracharger kit as a whole, and let them know like, hey, this is a conflict. And so I'm sending them the measurements of the hole that I drilled on their mount, and they're going to probably go ahead and start creating them with that hole for future plates. But simple enough to do by myself. I did it on the engine. I just put a bunch of rags underneath it. That way when I pressed through, it didn't actually hit the valve cover at all. So if you're going to do that, use caution. Make sure you vacuum up all the metal shards. But overall, really happy with this setup. The intake is going to be changing in the future, but I'm still going to keep that setup there. But anyways, hope you guys really enjoyed this video. This was a fun, pretty simple DIY, just a little time consuming. If you have questions or comments, leave them in the comments below. Yeah. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. That helps me out a lot. I want these videos to reach everybody so they all can learn how to do this themselves. And if you really want to help me out and support the channel, consider signing up for a paid membership subscription to the channel. It's $5 a month. There should be a join button under this video. If you're on an iOS device, YouTube and iOS don't play well, so you won't see the join video, but you can log in on a computer browser and you should see it, or shoot me a message and I'll send you a direct link to sign up. We got member-only giveaways, member-only group buys. We got an awesome private chat that everybody is in, just, hanging out and talking about stuff. It's a really great source of information in there. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about that, you can reach out to me, but otherwise, I will see you guys on the next DIY video. Thanks for hanging out with me and watching the video today.